I don't know about you, but I'm a big-time gamer. I'm kind of old school, and I like a lot of the older games. For example, I still play Counter-Strike like crazy. What can I say? I like the game. So I'm setting up a Counter-Strike server in my local network. And as you can see, it plugs into my router. And in order for my friends to play Counter-Strike with me, they need to be able to access this server. Now, Counter-Strike is a complicated game, and it doesn't use just one port. It uses, I got to read these, it uses port 1200, port 3478, port 4379, and then 4380, and then it needs 27,000 to 27,050. So in this particular situation, I need to open a lot of ports. Now, if I wanted to, I could go in and open up 1, 2, 3, 4, 55 individual port forwards, and I could do this with single port forwarding, but I got a good idea. Let's use something else that's called port range forwarding, and I'm going to fire up the router right now. Let's do it. All right, now I've got the web browser open to the web page that told me what ports I need to open, because this is what you have to do with these things. Nobody has this stuff memorized. You're always looking and saying, what ports do I need to open up for whatever I'm doing? So I've got them all here for my Counter-Strike source. So I'm going to head over right now to my router, and what I'm going to do is I want to show you something real quick. First of all, here's something called DMZ. DMZ is dangerous. DMZ stands for Demilitarized Zone, and you don't want to do this, but just so you know what it is, if I set up a DMZ, what I'm doing is I'm exposing one particular computer. So here I've got 192.168.15.104. Any request coming in from the internet, a web page request, an FTP, email, evil hackers, Counter-Strike source, anything coming in from the internet is going to be redirected to this one particular machine. I really hate DMZ. I could, if I wanted to, right now, fire up a DMZ and I could instantly expose my Counter-Strike server to the internet. However, I would expose it to all kinds of evils because literally anything coming in from the internet goes to the DMZ. So, do not do DMZ, just know what it is for the exam. Instead, let's use port range forwarding. So with port range forwarding, you can do individual ports or a range. So I believe the first one was 1200. So I can just do 1200 to 1200. I'm going to leave it as both because I'm not sure. And now I type in. So I type in the IP address of my Counter-Strike server, and I'll enable that. I'm going to apply settings, otherwise it'll keep forgetting it on me. Okay, what was the next one I had to do? So I need to do 3478, but I'm going to skip that. Let's just go ahead and do this big one right here, 27,000 to 27,050. And I'm just putting in CS to help me remember these are Counter-Strike. Now I could go ahead and add the rest of them to do it, but this should give you an idea. I better enable those two. And so what I've done here is I'm taking advantage of port range forwarding, which allows me to do an entire range of ports as opposed to ports one at a time. Port range forwarding is great, but we've got one other problem, and that is there are a few applications out there that will listen on one port but send on another. One is called FTP. FTP, or File Transfer Protocol, is a really old-fashioned, but still works great, way to transfer files from one computer to the other on the internet. The problem with FTP is that if my computer wants to access an FTP server, it'll send out a request on port 21, but the FTP server will respond back to some extent on port 20. Now that's a big problem for your router, because your router is ready to hear stuff coming back from port 21, but this FTP server on his own starts sending off on a different port. So when that happens, we've basically got to tell the router, listen, if I'm sending stuff out on port 21, be ready to listen back on port 20 as well as port 21. So that's what we call port triggering, and yep, this router does that too. Now, the example I'm going to give you is an FTP server. So what we have to do is we have to tell the computer that if anybody within our network is sending out stuff on port 21, you will then have to respond to any incoming port 20s from the internet. So let's go through and do that. So we'll hit add, and we'll call the application FTP because that's what it is. So we're going to start at 21 and we're going to end at 21. So what we're saying is only if a particular computer inside the network begins sending stuff out on port 21, send it back to that computer on port 20. So that's really all there is to it. Notice that we don't type in an IP address here because port triggering doesn't care about an IP address. Every single individual computer inside my network, any of them that starts sending out on 21, the router will automatically start sending stuff back to them personally on port 20. So whether it's a webcam or a Counter-Strike server, there are ways to get an internally NATed network server visible to the internet. Keep in mind that we saw port range forwarding and we saw port triggering. Make sure you understand the difference between the two. And we also saw the one I never want you to use, DMZ. Don't do it. It's just too dangerous.